Our coverage begins in the nation's capital, where the Federal Executive Council has given the green light to the 2024 Appropriation Bill, approving a staggering 27.5 trillion naira for the fiscal year. This marks an increase from the initial 26.01 trillion naira considered by the Council. Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Abubakar Bagudu, made the announcement to State House correspondents after the close of this week's Council meeting. The minister elaborated on the revised medium-term expenditure framework, which was earlier approved by the National Assembly, highlighting an exchange rate of 750 naira to a dollar and a crude oil benchmark of $77. He emphasized that these adjustments aim to enhance revenue generation. Mr. Bagudu noted that as the Council anticipates the budget presentation next week, the approval of 27.5 trillion naira budget reflects the government's strategic financial planning. He added that further details of the budget will be unveiled when President Bola Tinubu presents it to the National Assembly next week. To look at this, I'm joined by Development Economic Analyst Gbolahan Olojede. Thank you very much for giving us your time. Do you believe this allocation of 27.5 trillion naira in the 2024 appropriation bill will address key socio-economic challenges in Nigeria, and what sectors should receive significant funding to drive national development?
Well, 27 trillion is still a token relative to what we actually need as a country of 200 million people. I remember you had used the word staggering in your intro. But when you think about the fact that the entire 27.5 is just about 20% of South Africa's budget for 2022, you begin to wonder how staggering is staggering. And don't forget that South Africa is only 60 million people. We are 200. So how staggering is 27? However, if we spend it very well, we can begin to introduce some element of stability and correction into the economy, focusing on the right things, reducing unnecessary debts, and executing with discipline the things we set out to execute. It can turn out to be the base for correcting all sort of some of our economic challenges.
We've seen huge budgets in the past. What specific measures do we need to enhance transparency and accountability in the allocation and utilization of funds?
I think people need to show more interest in this budget. The federal government budget is a public document. It is always available at the website of the federal Budget Office of the Federation. It's always there. Well, in fact, if you go there, you probably see more than 4 or 5 years of those budgets hanging in there. So people need to show more interest. A very good example is what Mr. Doherty did in Lagos State recently. He showed interest because those information that he used in writing a letter to the executive governor were public information. They were there. Anybody could have picked them up. So can Nigerians begin to show more interest, especially at the level where it concerns you? Show interest in what has been there. These documents are public documents, and let's begin to ask more questions and demand for more accountability by virtue of showing it. If you don't show interest, we may not be able to drive the level of discipline in the execution of the budget.
In what ways does the budget prioritize infrastructure development, and how is the government planning to leverage these investments to stimulate economic growth and job creation?
Well, there's an amount for infrastructure out there, or I would say capital expenditure generally. Of course, part of that will go to infrastructure. But when you think about the fact that the amount for debt service is actually bigger than the amount for infrastructure, and consider the infrastructural gap that we have in the country, that amount will not cut it. However, government will need to lean more on other sources of fund, private sector involvement, private sector capital to be brought into that space to fast track our infrastructure development. Government alone with 6.7 or 7 trillion naira will not cut it as far as infrastructure is concerned. And we need to make a lot of investment in the infrastructure space.
There is a projection. The target revenue is 18 trillion naira. Are there adequate measures, in your view, in place to practically diversify the economy and boost revenue generation?
Well, I think most of what we will be driving will be more of stability. For example, we need to invest a bit more in agriculture to ensure that we can have food, sufficiency of food security. That has a direct implication for inflation, because food inflation is a huge part, a huge driver of our composite inflation figure. We have to be able to invest in security, because without security, we won't be able to drive the food security that we're talking about. If farmers cannot go to their farms and make things happen, then food security will not happen. If food security does not happen, inflation going down will be will be a major challenge. So, okay, you were going to say something.
Yeah, you talked about citizens engaging with the budget. I want to ask, how can citizens actively participate in this process, and what mechanisms should be in place to promote public engagement and feedback through the budget execution process? I know we're still waiting for the president to formally present to the National Assembly.
Yeah, like I said, these budgets are public information. So from individuals to NGOs, and the civil society organizations, we need to show more interest in that document and begin to ask questions. The budget will have a total breakdown that drill down to the nitty-gritty, how much was assigned to what. They are there as public documents. So we can ask questions. You can go to a particular area of that document that is of interest to you. Maybe you want to see healthcare, and not just healthcare. You want to see how much has been allocated to the federal healthcare institution that is in your state. You want to know specifically what the capital expenditure of that hospital was and what those items were meant to be. You can find it. That is a level of detail that is available in that public document. And that can form a basis for engaging government, for engaging the authorities that are directly involved in the budget implementation. So that kind of level of engagement is what I expect that our people will participate in. And it will help a great deal to put everybody on their toes as far as implementation of budget is concerned.
Gbolahan, as always, thank you very much for giving us your time.
The pleasure is mine. Thanks.